Black Educated and Broke Radio presents Mike's Got Something to Say with Mike B. I've wanted to hear a millennial point of view on today's politics, the state of the black community, and even this new fight for freedom. I sat down with Minister James Woodall, a young man who I feel could share insight on some hot political topics going on in 2019. With military experience and a run for public office in his early 20s, I knew James had the information I was seeking. This is Mike B. with Mike's Got Something to Say. What up, James?
What's going on, Doc? How you doing?
Minister James Woodall is in here with me. Don't forget to follow Black Educated and Broke on Instagram. You can also like us on Facebook, and now we're also on Twitter, BEB Podcast _ATL. And also subscribe to our YouTube page. What's up, man? Let me tell you, I've been knowing this dude a long time. He was a young whippersnapper. And now he is Minister James Woodall. Man, what's been going on, man? You keep me up to date. I said, let me go on James' Facebook page and see what I need to know today.
Nothing much, man. So I just finished up my career with the Army, and now working in the House of Representatives, and still get my degrees. I still got a PhD to go, so just trying to stay educated and black.
I know that's right. I know that's right. But you finished Georgia Southern undergrad?
I finished Georgia Southern undergrad, graduated my bachelor's in political science. I'm currently at the ITC, the Morehouse School of Religion.
Okay.
Getting my master's in divinity, and after I plan to pursue my PhD.
I ain't mad at that. Me and James, we grew up in church together. I was a little older when I came to our home church right in the city of Atlanta, Lindsay Street Baptist Church. The Honorable Pastor A.A.W. Motley. I came to Lindsay Street. I think I joined. I was like 14, and James, they were young. James, what was y'all? 10, 9, 10?
We were something.
They were young. They were young. But I wanted to get you in here. Black Educated and Broke. We are a podcast for the millennials. And, of course, right now, millennial age is so confusing. You go on the internet, and it's so many statistics for millennials. Some say millennials were born between the years of 1981 and 1996. So we were from, 22 to 38 years old, 39, right in there somewhere. And then they have the millennials that are 18 to 25. I don't know. I just know they putting us together. So our podcast is basically is just our viewpoint. I mean, we talk about everything. We do go into celebrity stuff. We talk about music, but one thing we do focus on is just blackness. I mean, everything that's going on in politics, neighborhood. I mean, I don't know how many shows we did where I reported about Flint, Michigan. And like, that's one thing we still say, Flint still don't have no water. But I just want to recap some stuff with you, man. You watched the Super Bowl?
Oh, I did. I was disappointed, of course, as was everyone else. But it was an opportunity for us to get away and just to kind of relax and enjoy yourself. The city was packed with a lot of people. I believe businesses made a lot of money, and people just kind of did their thing. So I'm happy that was here in Atlanta. However, I don't want to see it happen ever again.
How you think Keisha did? I think we did a good job hosting. I was impressed.
Well, Keisha Lance Bottoms, bless her heart. On one hand, I think I have it's no absolutes with me, right?
Okay.
I think on one hand she did a great job. She led the city into the Super Bowl, and we're trying to get in the rotation every 5 years to, bring the Super Bowl back to Atlanta. And it's a huge tax revenue booster, right? Mm-hmm. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, and I can't necessarily blame her for it, but it's something that she's responsible for now. Yeah. Is that the reality of it is that the city didn't benefit from the actual Super Bowl itself. The proceeds that came from people buying tickets and doing those types of things all went to Arthur Blank. And so if we pay for it as citizens and taxpayers, why aren't we also benefiting from it so that it can help our communities?
That is a great question. Speaking of the Super Bowl, everybody's been, the Colin Kaepernick situation. We all know back in, it was 2016, he decided to protest social injustice by taking the knee. Some people didn't agree with it. I was like, that's his form of protesting. He played that season. Of course, he went into the next football season, last two football seasons without a position on anybody's team, along with one of his teammates, Eric Reed. your thoughts about the boycott in general, because me, I don't know what I'm boycotting if I was to say I'm going to boycott the National Football League.
Well, I come at from a very unique perspective because I've served 8 years in the United States Army, and I support them kneeling because I know what they stand for, right? It was about police brutality.
Right.
I've organized marches here in Atlanta and elsewhere with the help of other organizers as well. And we hit these issues head on. Like, let's address police training. Let's talk about policies. Let's talk about practices that are being employed by these officers, these law enforcement officials. At the same time, however, I don't know if the NFL was the right avenue to boycott, because on one hand, again, I don't deal with absolutes. On one hand, I understand the frustration of him being blackballed, if you will, from the NFL. But on the other hand, I understand that sometimes there takes a sacrifice. And I'm not going to beg the NFL to give him a job because he's a free man. He's an autonomous man who has the ability and the agency to do whatever it is he thinks is necessary to be able to lead in this community. So I'm not going to be like, oh, NFL, I'm going to stop watching your games because you don't let Colin Kaepernick get another job. I mean, he's a millionaire, right? We don't necessarily go to Walmart when they underemploy our people and say we're going to stop going to Walmart.
Right.
And they literally have taken up mom and pop shops. They've literally taken up homes. They literally have underemployed our people that we then turn around on Sunday morning and ask them to tithe 10% of what they already don't have. And so if we're going to be honest about what it is that we stand for and talk about a black agenda that benefits our people, our communities, our families, then we have to be 100% in. We can't pick and choose just when it's convenient for us. And the other problem I have with the boycott is that everybody is starting to use it as their own agenda pusher. It's no longer just about police brutality. It's about the Confederate monuments. It's about community gentrification and redevelopment. Also, those things are great conversations. But if we're going to talk about boycotting the NFL, it has to be consistent and it has to be sustainable. What are the asks? Who are we asking? Are we asking Roger Goodell to implement policy changes? What are the factors that are buying into this boycott that makes us say the NFL is to be held responsible? If they're to be held responsible, what are they being held responsible for?
I agree. That's why I guess my thing was with the protests. I'm looking for an agenda, and like you said, it was so many different pushes. Because then I saw Ava DuVernay tweet about everybody was standing in solidarity or standing with Cap over the Super Bowl weekend,
right? And
she was part of her tweet was not only of course Kaepernick and social injustices, but it was also about the health of NFL players. And we know if you know a lot of football players, and if you play football, you know what you sign up for. So I'm like, we protesting that now? Like I don't understand we protesting because the league continues to enforce policy to cut back on some of these type of physical injuries. Every time you look up, you watching the game, you like, the ref let them play. They can't even hit each other no more. So we got all that going on. So I'm like, what are you talking about as far as your boycott? And then I thought the original thing was it wasn't about the national anthem, because then of course Gladys Knight got a lot of heat for singing the national anthem for Super Bowl. But I'm like, I don't remember nobody going after Boys to Men at the beginning of the season. They opened up the season with the Eagles singing the national anthem.
And guess who played in that game? The Atlanta Falcons, right?
I mean, I still don't understand it. And it was because he didn't have a job. I said, well, Eric Reed did the same thing. Eric Reed, much younger than Kaepernick, different player, but eventually he got a job. Why he was signed originally, I don't know. Carolina Panthers decided they were going to sign him. He also went through how many drug tests? Like seven or eight drug tests in a short span, because he was signed like week 5, week 6 in the during the league. So I'm like, I don't know what your purpose is as far as the boycott. So I don't know. That's why I just had to ask you about it. Like I said, Super Bowl was here in Atlanta. The festivities, everything that was here. But as far as what we are, because then also there's the backlash of Dr. Bernice King, Representative Lewis, and Representative John Lewis, and Andrew Young before the coin toss. Like, what did you think when you saw that?
I didn't think nothing about it. I mean, I love them, all as individuals. Nobody's perfect. And I think it's important for us to recognize that we can't become so sensitive, and I want to make sure I'm clear as when I say this. I don't want it to be offensive, but I think we've got to a point in our culture and in our community that we become so sensitive to what's going on, or desensitized rather to what's going on, that we kind of just push everybody to the edge, right? And like, for instance, what's going on in Virginia, that has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter or the boycott. However, when we become so on edge that we start making decisions and policies and movements, if you will, that really don't reflect our best interest. And so it sounds good in theory, and we talk about, we want to have Black liberation, and we want to be free as people, and we want to have autonomy over our own bodies and build our own communities. But the reality of it is the direction to which we find ourselves going in is an exact opposite of what we say we want. So I think it's important for us to actually identify those things first before we start responding to various agents within our community, within our experience, that allows for us to be able to say, I don't agree with this, right? And I think we have to be very honest with ourselves and actually have leadership that reflects that.
Do you think things would be a little bit more different if Colin Kaepernick was more vocal? I don't see him doing anything but tweeting, other than his organizational work and support. Was the Know Your Rights campaign. I agree with the campaign. It's to support youth with how to interact with police officers and law enforcement. Love it. If that's what you're gonna do, I love it. I support it. You need money for it. Listen, I ain't got that much. I give you some, just like everybody else. I feel donate to it. But I'm like, I need you to be more vocal in what you want people to do.
Well, this is where we start having these issues because, like, I don't necessarily see, in the space that I find myself in activism, I don't see, I don't want to say I don't see a need for him. He's a football player. He's not an activist, right? Like, I want him to do what his space calls for him to do, what his calling pushes him to do. I don't want him to be pushed into a place where the community is saying, this is what we need from you.
Okay.
Right? They're activists, they're organizers, they're advocates, they're leaders in the community already doing that work, right? There's enough work for all of us to go around. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to say, Colin Kaepernick, because you got fired or you didn't get rehired, rather, that you need to do X, Y, and Z. No. Like, Colin Kaepernick, do what you're going to do, brother. We're going to support you.
Right.
If you're for the liberation of our people, we're going to support you and be there right there with you. But guess what? If you start playing football again, like Eric Reed did and like Malcolm Jenkins did, right? If you continue to do what you have been doing, we're going to still be in the streets.
Exactly.
We still got people that don't eat at night, right? We still got people sleeping on the streets at night, right? We got families that are being broken apart, split apart. We got people still incarcerated. The work will never stop. And regardless of who is the agent of change in the moment that we are finding ourselves in, we still got work to do. And so I think if we don't get so caught up in that moment of trying to respond to every little thing, and we understand what really is at play, because we can't respond by what we see.
Right.
We have to be able to discern through the spirit. And I think that's really where we're trying to go, but a lot of people don't understand that. And that's just my perspective of what it is we're trying to push towards. We're trying to push towards the liberation of our soul.
Right.
And Jasper Williams was onto something. I thought he was a little crazy, and he didn't say it at the right time, but he was onto something that we have to recapture the soul, because the soul of Black folks is what's at stake.
Amen. I totally agree. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is Black Educated and Broke Radio.
I'm James Major Woodall, and you're listening to Black Educated and Broke.
Mike's got something to say.
Black Educated and Broke Radio, Mike B. I'm here with Minister James Woodall. This is Mike's Got Something to Say, sponsored by Chocolate Ancestor. So, we've been just having the insight on some things, some issues that's going on in our community, or hot topics as you want to call it. So now we got the 2020 presidential race. And, of course, the Democratic nominees, Senator Cory Booker, Senator Kamala Harris, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Who you like? You looking at somebody?
You know, it's been very difficult for me to really say much about the Democratic nominees. What I can do is just be able to evaluate the facts. Currently, right now, as it stands, I don't know who I would vote for if the field was to be set at who's in there. You look at Senator Booker from New Jersey, I believe.
Yeah, Jersey.
He's a great guy. He's been very vocal. But if I look at the record, he's been big pharma. He's been big Wall Street. I mean, my interest is not partisan politics. It's about the people.
Right.
And taking money and from the big pharmaceutical companies that increase prescription drugs for the poor among us, that's something I'm not willing to support. And he only stopped it when people said something about it. He's also big Wall Street, and I believe those who are on Wall Street are some of the worst crooks in the world. The only way you get rich and wealthy and become a billionaire is off the backs of poor people. So that's problematic for me. But again, I can still recognize the good work that he's done. Kamala Harris, Senator Harris from California, I can't ignore the fact that when she was Attorney General and District Attorney, what her role was in mass incarceration. She's only been a senator for one term, so I also have concerns about her ability to be an executor in a position as president. Now, we can always say President Trump, look at him, he's doing X, Y, and Z. But the reality of it is I don't want a President Trump. I want somebody who has the expertise, the experience, and the know-how, the subject matter expertise to be able to get us out of this mess. And unfortunately, we are in quite a quandary of sorts. From the international policy perspective to the federal deficit to trade deficits to exports and industry. I truly believe we're headed to a recession. I really do. And there are economic indicators that would support that conclusion. However, whoever will be the next president, if Trump is not reelected or he decides not to rerun, they're going to have a huge task on their shoulders. And so I think it's important for them to specifically, I think their best bet would be to stay in the Senate. You know, like, I think a lot of people who are running for Democratic nominee, they're not necessarily, really invested in running for president. I think they're setting themselves up to be a potential cabinet member. And it's about power. Again, it's not about, hey, I think I'm the best person for the job. It's about getting myself out there so people know who I am, so I can get support, so I can get money, so I can get access. That's what it's about. That's politics. Politics is a game. And if you don't play the game, you lose. And so they are playing the game. And unfortunately, those who are watching on the sidelines are called the American people, right? And so I think it's incumbent upon us to not only do the research, be very analytical and critical about what we see on the news, but also what they say. Because there's one thing to see it, and there's one thing to actually be there. And oftentimes those two don't coincide with the reality, right? And so we have to be very careful about what we say, we know, we believe, we support, because that can sometimes come back to bite us.
Senator Elizabeth Warren announced her, I think it was more of an exploratory committee, but when Senator Harris announced her candidacy for president for the 2020 election, Elizabeth Warren made a statement. I liked it. Her statement was, and I'm not quoting this, she was like, it's good for the party. She said they need, y'all should see this face, but she was like, it was good for the party. She said the Democrats are in need of new ideas.
No, they're not. The Democratic Party is not in need of new ideas. They got all the ideas in the world. What the Democratic Party needs is strategies.
Right.
They need access. They need people who are who are willing to tell the truth. The reality of it is the Democratic Party, they sit in shallows, and I'm a Democrat. Like I told myself I wasn't going to affiliate after my last election. However, I'm more liberal than not, right? Like if I have to put myself in a category, I would say a Democrat. But the reality of it is that we don't have chief strategists, at least not on this level here at the state and locally, but on the national level, they have chief strategists. But it seems to be the strategy is, let's just defend ourselves against Trump. I'm like, what are you defending, right? Like, you have won back the House, and I don't think, well, I can't say that. It was some hard people. It was some people who did some very good work in the field. But the reality of it is that those are natural waves that come, right? You have a consistent overchange of power, and there's the Republicans, the Democrats, Republicans, Democrats. It goes back and forth.
Right.
But if you want to really push an agenda, regardless of if you're in power or not, you have to be unapologetically who you are. You can't just depend on identity politics. I don't think identity politics should just go do away with, but you have to actually present ideas, be able to strategize, put money where your mouth is, and actually get the job done. And there's just too many people, and I'm not necessarily saying Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker, because they're all elected, right? They've raised the money, they've organized, they've knocked on doors, But as a collective group, I believe the Democrats need to put together a strategic plan that does not just include winning elections just for the sake of winning elections, but preparing a bench, whether it's federal judges, whether it's solicitors, whether it's attorney generals, right? Whether it's congressmen, senators. And so all of those things come into play when we talk about a federal strategy and a civic engagement plan that really benefits American people. That's at the end of it, right? We have a census coming up. We have reappropriation and redistricting coming up. Where's the plans? Like, I know people are having these conversations, but the reality of it is that our best interest, or who does that conversation benefit when it's being had?
Talk about your running. You ran for a state representative?
Yes, so I ran for state representative here in Georgia in 2016. I ran in House District 142 against Chairman Jan Tankersley, which covers Statesboro, Bullock County area here in Georgia, Southeast Georgia more specifically. I only got about 30% of the vote. That was my first opportunity to run. I only ran because I was a college senior. I was tired of people talking about the issues that didn't represent us, right? Like, the issue that got me into the race was guns on campus. I love guns, right? I shoot them. I don't think they belong in the schools, right? Like, I don't think you should just be able to carry on a college campus because you feel like it, right? I don't want to see another college campus getting shot up. So I was against it. The student body was against it. They had a vote. 70% said, no, we don't want that here. The police department on campus didn't want it. The leadership didn't want it. Administration. So when we had that vote go down and the representative that represented us voted for it, I said, well, something has to give. Because if you're not representing us, then who are you representing?
Okay.
Right? And so I ran, didn't do any research, didn't look at any numbers, didn't fundraise. I asked a few people, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. Drove down to Atlanta, raised about $400 because I was a college senior. I didn't have no $400. Got somebody to fund me, and I ran. And I learned so much in that 6 to 8 month period about policy, about organizing, about myself, about those who are around me, about those who supported me. And that was an experience of a lifetime. I think, I don't think everybody should run for office, but it put
That's
me
not for me. That's
right.
Not for me.
Put me in a position to be able to be seen on the state level, and that's how I started connecting with politicians and the representative I work for now at the state capitol. That's how I met her, and it just propelled my career to the next level.
Talk about, and you don't have to go too much in detail if you don't want to, but a big name. I was familiar with Senator Bernie Sanders. I was familiar with him through my grandfather. My grandfather, I used to have many conversations with before he passed away, and he actually introduced me to Senator Sanders during the President Obama campaign when Senator Obama decided he was the nominee for president. A lot of people love his idea of government and what it should be. And a lot of that stuff, I mean, if you're listening to it, if you read it, a lot of people, because of social media now, they go for the simple stuff. Like, he had a tweet earlier today about what other countries do as far as health care, as far as government benefits for retirees, and it sounds good, but I guess for me, and I like Senator Sanders as well. I thought he ran a different kind of campaign for the 2016 election, but running for president again, if he decides to, what does that do? I hear a lot of strategists, a lot of political commentators, especially older African Americans. They feel it's a divide in the vote. They feel he has no plan. Some they just don't like him. I've seen some women. I mean, he's just this pretty much a white male chauvinist. I've seen all kind of statements. The legendary comedian Marsha Warfield, who's kind of back out in the social life now, she's a known feminist. And Bernie Sanders, I mean, during that election, I've never seen so much dragging of this man in the 8 years that I was aware of him from 2008 until he announced his run for president in 2016. So Bernie Sanders, who is Bernie Sanders? What is he going to do?
So now, speaking in absolutes, one, I think Bernie Sanders was cheated I think he was a threat to the power dynamics of the dominant narrative, and he challenged, quite frankly, the capitalist system to which we know it, and as I refer to as the empire. And anytime you have a challenge of the dominant narrative and you have a challenge to the empire will try to kill you. They will try to destroy you. They will try to misrepresent and mischaracterize who you are. Now, with that said, I don't think Bernie Sanders is perfect. I don't think he's without fault. I don't agree with every policy perspective he shares. However, what I do know for a fact is that there's a reason why he did not win the Democratic nominee, the nomination. And it wasn't because of his own doing. It was because of the power dynamic. And every poll that I saw says if Bernie Sanders wins, he beats Trump easily.
They were out there. I mean, I guess you could say the polls that were for us, young people, millennials, I mean, the ones that are younger than us who were first-time voters in 2016. I mean, up until that age group of 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds who've been voting since the 90s. You know, their first election was Clinton. I mean, he would have been the Democratic nominee.
Yep.
He would have been president.
Right.
Bernie Sanders.
But the challenge, because he identifies as a democratic socialist, we have this thing that we say, oh, he's a socialist. We actually look at the system of what socialism is. Now, granted, the violence and the central control of the means of production and those types of things, we can have a nuanced conversation about, economic system. However, me personally as a leader, I'm not pro-capitalism. I'm not, because, again, we've commoditized time, we've commoditized the human labor, we've commoditized the human body, and so those three things, that which we don't control, nor do we own, they were all, even the earth, that's number 4, right? We don't own or control those things. They were God-given and divinely inspired, yet we've found a way to commoditize them through this economic system called capitalism, and so therefore people suffer and they lose. And they put more emphasis and more worship and more investing in this system than in God and in themselves and in this earth. And so therefore they suffer. So for me, I'm with him. I'm ears, because he challenges, for me, those lies that you must be working in order to benefit. You heard it, and I hear it all the time. All those people on welfare. They need to get up and find a job, right? Basically meaning if you don't have money, that's because you don't work, and if you don't work, that means you're not worth living. Right? And if you're not worth living, you shouldn't even have health care. You shouldn't have a job. You shouldn't have food. You shouldn't have a house. We shouldn't pay for all that stuff. And so it has its third and fourth order effects. And so that's my challenge to what Bernie speaks of. I would support Bernie again, because he's the only one, even in the State of the Union address. Stacey Abrams, I love her to death. But she didn't address the actual lies that Donald Trump spoke. She spoke as if it was a campaign. She spoke as if she was trying to convince people that who she was authentically who she was. Bernie Sanders said, y'all know who I am, and I'm coming with the facts. The facts are we are not doing well. The facts are the economic system that we have are disproportionately affecting brown and people of color and black folks, right? The facts is that we have people incarcerated, and this prison industrial complex has put more people into prisons. The facts are we got Christian entrepreneurs, and I'm throwing shots here, but the facts are we got Christian entrepreneurs who start things like Sprinkler Jesus, who tells black folks to go invest in more private prisons, right? So that's the reality that we're living in, and if we want to be free, we need to ask ourselves again, like I said earlier, what it is we want to be free from. Do we want to be the new white man, or do we want to be free? Because the reality of it is most people don't want to be free. They just want to be the new white man.
Wow, we're going to touch on that. And last but not least, of course, there are other candidates they're looking for. Of course, is he still in office? Beto?
Beto O'Rourke. So, no, he lost his Senate race to Ted Cruz. And unfortunately,
what was he before?
He was a congressman.
Congressman? Okay, so
he
was in the House.
He was in the House.
Okay.
He was in the House. But I think his tenure was up, but he's no longer in Congress.
I don't know if he was with Oprah but he said he would announce next month if he would decide to run. Any thoughts on him?
I don't know his politic enough. I don't know him enough. I'm not from Texas, so I paid attention to the race, but I was running my own race. I was running in the 12th congressional district here in Georgia. Helping with that race and watching Stacey try to become the next governor of Georgia. However, I haven't done too much research into him. I know Texas politics, and the reality of it is Texas isn't progressive, right? Even the Democrats aren't as progressive. They still have to get elected, and so you are the company you keep. And unfortunately, he didn't win his election, and there's been talks about him and Biden teaming up to run. I love Joe Biden. He's honest.
That was my next question.
Right. If Biden gets in this race, I'll probably be more apt to vote for him, to be honest with you, because he's experienced, he's tenured, and I mean, as bad as it sounds, it might contradict what I've shared thus far, but he's a maintenance. Like, I'd rather somebody who just goes in and maintains and not makes it worse at this point, because that's really what public policy is all about, is maintaining. And so if I don't want to blow out the entire system up, at least let's maintain what we got, right? Let's not make it worse while we try to work to make it better. So Biden probably would be the one I would support as we sit today. But, time will tell. The truth always comes out. Sometimes it comes out too late, but I'm just going off the information I know.
And we're going to take a quick break. This is Mike's Got Something to Say with Black, Educated, and Broke. Each and every week, Black, Educated, and Broke, Mike's Got Something to Say is brought to you by Chocolate Ancestor, an online apparel and accessory shop that brings meaning and self-expression into fashion. At the end of the day, Chocolate Ancestor lets you be you. Log on to www.chocolateancestor.com for the latest deals and designs.
Hey, it's your girl, Chrissy Love, and you're listening to Mike's Got Something to Say, brought to you by Chocolate Ancestor.
It's Black, Educated, and Broke Radio. Mike's Got Something to Say with Mike B. Of course, Mike's Got Something to Say is brought to you by Chocolate Ancestor. Minister James Woodall, this is my brother. Been knowing this dude a long time. Very proud of where he's going, what he has done. You got my vote. What you running for? I only know what you're running for. You got my vote. But lastly, man, we had this conversation because you see a lot of people on social media, which is, that's the platform. Everybody got a voice, which I'm not mad at. It's good to see different opinions and different ideas form. If only we could bring those ideas to a table to come up with solutions. But so many people have so many things to talk about and how they feel. And of course, there was a Facebook status we kind of talked about off air via text about African Americans paying some kind of price with the presidency of President Obama. And I said, maybe I'm just not aware. I didn't know I paid a price. But we kind of went to there too. A lot of times, everybody talks about the black agenda. And when I say everybody, I mean some of our most elite and intellectual leaders, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, Dr. Cornel West, some well-respected people I love and respect. But they're always talking about the black agenda. But I never know the outline or the details of what exactly we're talking about as far as the black agenda, because they, especially the last 8 years or during the President Obama administration, it was all on President Obama to be like this genie when it came to the black agenda. That's how I felt they were coming after him. But that's not really the case. But can you, if you could, for our listeners, what is the black agenda or your idea of the black agenda?
So I believe the black agenda is quite simple. It's to be free. And what freedom looks like is to have agency to decide how we live, where we live, why we live, and how long to live in that existence. That freedom looks like having autonomy over our own bodies, the freedom to experience the world in a very authentic and genuine way. And these ideals translates to policy and decisions and actions and programming. But generally speaking, this is what I believe the black agenda to be. And, oftentimes we think of it in some grandiose terms that reflect going to the presidency, getting firsts in history, like becoming the first president, becoming the first black CEO, becoming the first Super Bowl winner that's African American that wins 6 titles, right? Stuff like that. But I think it's more deeper than that and more simple than that. And it just finds to be free in oneself, whether it's body, mind, and or soul. I think that's the black agenda, because blackness is not a color, it's a circumstance, it's a divinity, it's a essence of being to which allows for us to exist in such a way that God is with us. That's blackness. Now, you don't have to be African American to be black, right? And so if we wanted to talk about blackness in a way that supersedes culture, supersedes oppression, supersedes agency, supersedes circumstance and limiting experience, we have to be able to understand first what blackness is in order to have a black agenda. Blackness for me, and when you read the souls of black folks, or when you talk about the Negro, right, or you talk about African American history in the Black History Month. So all those things culminate ultimately into what blackness means, and this is why I don't necessarily identify as African American as much. I mean, I am African American, don't get me wrong, but I am black. I like my blackness. I embrace my blackness. I value my blackness. I worship in blackness. I find purity in blackness, not whiteness, but blackness, because whiteness is nothing more than a reflection of the empire. So that's our agenda, is to be free. No permanent friends, no permanent issues. I mean, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent issues, and that issue is the liberation of our people. That's the black agenda, and it has to be if we're to be free.
So as we wrap this conversation up, on the podcast, we have a segment to say something positive. So I want you to say something to leave with our listeners.
The master's tools will never destroy the master's house.
Amen.
Ashe.
Yo, man, Minister James, you want to give your social media handles or anything that you're doing?
Most definitely. So you all can check me out on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, what you have at I Major Wish. I Major Wish. I, the letter I, Major, MAJOR, Wish, WISH. I Major Wish. Appreciate it.
And we appreciate you, man. Don't forget, you can follow and like Black Educated and Broke on Instagram, Facebook. We're now on Twitter at BEB Podcast _ATL. That's BEB Podcast _ATL. Subscribe to our YouTube page. Also, you can subscribe to us on Apple iTunes and SoundCloud. This has been Mike's Got Something to Say, presented by Black Educated and Broke Radio.